What is the meaning of life is a question that everybody has asked at least once in their life. There are many answers to that question, and no one knows which answer is right and which one is wrong. Some people think that the meaning of life is the survival of the fittest. Others think that the meaning of life is to make more life, and some people think that the meaning of life is death. I personally think that the meaning of life is to live. Live it until you run into the ground, because after all, life is just a movie that only God could enjoy. That is me driving to work sometime in 2019, a year before I retired. At this point, I am 75 years old working as a high school teacher at Tarantino High School. I began working as a U.S. history teacher back in 1993. I was only 49. That's usually about when teachers start thinking about retirement. I would have became a teacher earlier in 85, but I had to graduate high school first. 87 was when I actually graduated. Then college and my hiring followed right afterwards. On this day that we see here, I was having a bit of a mental breakdown, I was thinking way too much about my past. Surprisingly, I wasn't always that crazy. That's just an example of what 75 years of stress does to you. All the stress began at the exact moment when I started living. It all started when I was 16, way back in 1960. I walked home from school one day, and I already could tell that something was not right. The house did not reek of my mother's cooking like it usually did. I went upstairs to discover a burglar in the house. I didn't know what to do except to chokehold him and call the cops. The strange man in my house had a $500 bounty on his head. That money paid off the rent for months. Before that day, I didn't know that everyday people could make money by turning people in at the local jailhouse. I honestly thought that was only a thing you saw in Gunsmoke or something. I was absolutely amazed. The next day, I dropped out of high school and became the best bounty hunter in all of California. My home back then, and for many years to come. My life was pretty good for about the next decade. Then things started to peak in 1971. I consider that to be the best year of my life. Hunting down a criminal was as easy as breathing at that point. Are you Kent Anderson?
Indeed I am. Who is asking?
Clark Crawley. I'm a huge fan of your work.
Someone has good taste. What is this?
You, sir, are arrested for 12 murders in 3 states from the span of 1968 to 1971. Then roadblocks showed up in my path. I became a father, but not a husband. Things didn't necessarily start to decline in 1972, but that year was the first of many bad years to come. I often considered 1971 to be amazing, but during that year I messed up big time. Unfortunately, I was forced to commit my biggest mistake. The mother of my daughter was actually a criminal herself. Her ad in the newspaper was one I received one day, and I had to bring her to justice. Of course I didn't want it to. But the reason why the California crime rate didn't skyrocket more than already did was because of me. I had a job to do, and I like to think that I did it well, and unfortunately this was a part of my job. After the arrest and eventual death of the mother of my child, my daughter was forced to live with her aunt who fed her false information about me and the faith of her mother. I didn't hear from my daughter again until 1977. In 1977, I started a little office. I had a team of bounty hunters that turned in criminals to me, and I turned them into the cops. It was a good system, and it boosted the status of my good name in the streets of California. One day, I got a hate-filled letter from my daughter, and I was absolutely heartbroken. But I couldn't be there for her. I had to stay where I was and make the streets of California a better place for her and others like her to live in. The next and last time I saw her was in 1985, the most important year of my life. She was only 14 years old. She tried to overthrow my business as revenge for what she thought happened to her mother. She did a good job, might I add. She came to my office, and the next thing I remember, I was in a dumpster on the other side of the country, treated like absolute trash. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was my aha moment. Not only did I get kicked out of the life I knew, but it was by my daughter, the only thing I ever truly loved. That seems like the end, but that's only Act 1. Before the day my life started back in 1960, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Since I was back at that point, I decided to finish school. Yep, a 41-year-old back in high school to learn. I started high school in 1959 and I finished in 1987. I went to college right afterwards and graduated that in 1993. But then I was well accustomed to living life in the Windy City. Never in my life did I stop to think that I would end up there. Right after I graduated from college, I got a teaching job as a U.S. history teacher at Tarantino High School in the suburbs, and I retired as a U.S. history teacher at Tarantino High School. Not much has happened in my 27 years of teaching. I've made one friend, and I've spent my time thinking a little too much, People always complain that their life sucks or it's totally amazing, but, not me. My life is just interesting. I made only a few mistakes, and there was points where I bit off way too much than I could chew, but I made it through it all because I only did it one way, and that was my way, which, I'll be honest, I wouldn't recommend that for everyone. But I guess someone enjoyed my life burning and blossoming at the same time, because after all, life is just a movie that only God could enjoy.